I'm really sorry guys, I look like I'm sitting on a hill or something, but we're in too deep to turn back now. Hey and welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and I love to talk about books. And today I'm going to do a tag video because I am feeling a little bit uninspired. But before I kick off with that, I have to apologise for light and sound today, I think, because there is an actual storm raging outside, which I was not expecting. Yesterday we had a beautiful sunny day, and I sat in the garden for my lunch and stuff, and now today it's torrential rain, the wind is howling, so the light is not great in here today, and I'm sitting right beside the fireplace, so you might hear the wind howling down the chimney. I also have a dog here today. Jojo, yes, we do. This is Darcy, although she's a bit camera shy, so I don't think she'll look, she's too interested in my face. She is back staying with me for a little while. I got her back off my ex for a bit because there have been break-ins in houses around here, which is a little bit worrying, and she may be a complete nuisance a lot of the time, but she is a fantastic guard dog. So, you helping mummy, aren't you? I might have a few distractions as well as sound and lighting issues. This is going to be a good one, but it is what it is. We'll deal with it, and let's just have a lovely time talking about books. So here in Scotland we are still in lockdown, which is slightly different from any of my, say, English subscribers or any of my American subscribers, but Nicola Sturgeon made the announcement last week that will be easing from the end of next week, but I think it's a very softly approach, which I am totally here for. I'm not quite ready to be exposed to the wider world again, and so to honour what we've all kind of been through so far, I thought I would try out this tag. I haven't been tagged by anyone, but I thought I would just do it anyway. It is originally from Princess of Paperback, and it's the Stay at Home tag. So I've probably whittled on enough. Let's just jump into it. So question 1 is about laying in bed. I have been having some naps during lockdown. My nearly 3-year-old still takes a good couple of hours sleep in the afternoon, and usually I will lie in bed with him and read, but sometimes reading turns to snoozing. So the question for this is a book you have or could have read in a day. This isn't something I do particularly often unless it's maybe like part of a readathon. I don't tend to just devote a whole day to reading, so there aren't many books that fall into this category. So I went with books that only took me a couple of days to finish, and went with Jezebel by Irene Nemirovsky, who wrote Suis Français, which was written during World War II and published, I think, after her death. I think her daughters found the manuscript in her belongings after her death. That's a really impactful book. Jezebel is very different. It's a court case drama. Gladys, who is not as young as she used to be but is still just as beautiful, is accused of murdering her lover. But this book goes way beyond the court case and looks at how Gladys's obsession with her youth has dictated a lot of her actions, including the turbulent relationship she has with her daughter. I kind of felt she's like the female Dorian Gray. Her one true passion in life is reveling in her beauty and making men fall in love with her, but her vanity kind of catches her up in a web of lies and dark doings, and this is kind of her unraveling. Gladys is not a likeable character. She's kind of the sort of character that you love to hate, but even with that, Nemirovsky manages to bring some humanity to her, and I really liked watching it all unfold and wondering whether there was going to be some sort of glimpse of something deeper within Gladys. I really enjoyed this, and considering it was written, I think, before the Second World War, it actually still feels really fresh. So yeah, definitely a good quick read, but not in any way, shape or form throwaway. The second topic is snacking, which is something I have been trying to limit at the start of lockdown, I was really eating my feelings about a lot of things, and I put on a lot of weight, but I'll cover that in a different topic. But snacking in our house is huge. Like, I don't know if it's just my boys or if children are just programmed to want to eat constantly, but it almost feels like the first word out of my kid's mouth in the morning is snack. We have snack. So I've kind of had to put them on a timetable for their eating. They have their breakfast, they get a snack at 10:30, they get their lunch, they get a snack around 3 o'clock, and then they have their dinner, because otherwise it's just a constant barrage of requests for food, and I was getting driven a bit stir crazy by it. And the prompt for this topic is a guilty pleasure book. Now, God, I really struggled with this one because I'm not even sure I like the term guilty pleasure. Like, if you like something, enjoy it for what it is. Like, you do you, boo. Yeah, and then I think the sorts of things that would be classed as a guilty pleasure, they're not really the sorts of things I read. You know, I'm not even going to give examples because I don't think it's right to class someone else's maybe favourite genre or type of book as a guilty pleasure, and I'm not passing a judgment on any other readers. So yeah, I've really struggled with this one, but I have just this morning finished a book that I suppose for me is a bit of a guilty pleasure, because, you know, it wasn't very literary, it wasn't very deep, it was a bit fluffy, it was just a bit of fun, I suppose, and I think that's kind of what's meant by guilty pleasure. So I just finished Wendy Webb's Daughters of the Lake, which I think I must have got as like an Amazon, what do they call them? I'll write it on the screen, but you know when you get offered, if you're a Prime member, you get offered a choice of a free book from new releases each month. So I think that's where this one came from, because I don't necessarily think I'd have picked it up otherwise. So Kate, our protagonist, has moved home to her parents' house on the shores of Lake Superior after finding out her husband has had an affair. And one morning, a body washes up on the beach by their house, and Kate instinctively knows this woman, but she has only ever met her in her dreams. And as we go through the book, Kate dreams more in unravelling the mystery of this woman. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that this woman had died 100 years previously, and the mystery is really, who is she? Who is she to Kate? Why does she keep appearing in her dreams? And how did she end up in the lake, presumably murdered, clutching a newborn baby? So this book has a lot of good things to it. Like, it was totally compelling and readable, and I really wanted to find out the answers. I guessed them probably about halfway through, but it was quite satisfying to see that I had figured it out. But there are also things in it that are really not my usual cup of tea. I can enjoy them with a bit of an eye roll. It's very fluffy. There's like schmaltzy romance stuff. There's no real depth to it considering the subject matter of infidelity, of murder. I didn't really feel any real sense of emotions and things, and I think partly that's because of the writing was a bit cheesy. I did really struggle with the relationship Kate has with her cousin. There's a lot of him putting her in the bath and them sharing a bed together and stuff. Not in a grotty way, but like in a way to force that relationship, like to make it seem realistic, but in the process it kind of made it really unrealistic. But you know, it was a fun read. Just I don't think it's going to be one of my all-time favourites. A bit like snacking, really. Enjoyed it at the time, probably don't want to think about it afterwards. The next topic is Netflix, of which I'm a big fan, but recently I've been watching a lot of Louis Theroux documentaries. I've been watching a lot of Drag Race, all the kind of spin-offs and the current season, but I've been probably watching more BookTube than anything else during lockdown. It's been a real comfort to me, and I find you guys fascinating. And the question for this topic is a series you'd like to start. I'm not a big reader of series, probably mainly to do with the fact that I don't read a lot of fantasy or sci-fi or romance or mystery. That kind of, they are the genres where series dominate. And even in the sorts of books that I do like to read. I'm not sure I'd be keen on a series because a series is a commitment, and when it comes to reading I like to be a little bit more free and easy, and I think if I really got into a series and then had to wait for ages for the next book, I wouldn't really enjoy that. So for this one I decided to look at the different adaptations that are available as series on Netflix and look at the books that I've got in my TBR, and I went with The Haunting of Hill House, which was originally a book by Shirley Jackson. I haven't read any of Shirley Jackson yet, but I've always meant to read We've Always Lived in the Castle. I'm not a big horror reader, but there's something about the appeal of Shirley Jackson that makes me a bit more interested in her. I have started The Haunting of Hill House, but I haven't finished it, and I've heard people say that the book and TV series are very, very different. I think the vibe is the same, but the story for Netflix has been modernised and adapted a bit. So I think it would be interesting to watch the series and read the book and just see what everyone's talking about. The next topic is deep clean, which, oh my god. I am not the world's best housekeeper. I try, I really do try, but you know, I'm a busy mum, I've got 3 kids, I ordinarily work pretty much full time, and when I get home, cleaning is the last thing I want to do. So I thought with lockdown, I'm not going out to work, I'll have more time for these things. I imagined I was going to declutter my house, it was going to be all tidy and sorted and getting it the way that I want it to be as I go through divorce. It has not happened that way, and actually it's probably messier and dirtier than it was before, which I find that incredibly stressful. It really affects my mental health, and I do feel much better when I have had that burst of motivation and energy to get the house into some sort of shape. Never completely done. I will never let a living soul in my bedroom. But my plan is eventually to overhaul the house. There's furniture I don't want in here anymore. There's my ex's stuff that I definitely don't want in here anymore. There's toys that the kids have outgrown or never play with, and there's decorating that I want to do. So someday we'll get there, but I think I just have to accept that lockdown is not my time for that. And the prompt for this topic is a book that's been on your TBR for a long time. So I sorted my books on Goodreads just to check, and I've got some books from 2011 are the oldest, but I've gone with one that has been on my TBR since 2013, but it's actually on my reading plan for this year. So that is Blackbird House by Alice Hoffman. So this book spans 200 years, and I think it's about the occupiers of this Blackbird House over those 200 years, and it interconnects all their narratives. And I love multiple narrators, different time periods, and I particularly love it when they all come together, and I think that's what this book is going to deliver. There's love and magic interwoven in it, so I think this might be quite a cosy read, and it's the first Alice Hoffman that I will have read, so I'm interested to see, because I hear her name a lot, particularly related to practical magic, so I've got high hopes for this one. The next topic is Animal Crossing, which I blame you, BookTube. I blame you. I see you. And I blame you. I saw all the mentions of Animal Crossing and I just kind of rolled my eyes and was just like, okay. But in a moment of madness, I downloaded the app version. It's called like Pocket Camp or something. But every now and again, I will open it and lose hours of my life playing with bunny rabbits wearing t-shirts. I am nearly 36 years old. But I know that probably after I film this video, I will just be going in and checking on my little critters in my campsite. So fittingly, the prompt for this topic is a book you bought recently because of hype. I am not a big hype reader. I think that's more to do with the fact that I have a huge physical backlog that I'm trying to get through. I don't spend a lot of money on books because I buy them secondhand, so really I'm at the mercies of what other people have chucked out or what my library has to hand. But my list on Goodreads of all the books that I want to read that other booktubers and podcasters have been mentioning is pretty big, But the book I went for was one that I have read. I read it at the end of last year. I failed the prompt a little bit because I didn't buy it. I borrowed it from the library, but it was Pachinko by Jin Lee. Sorry, I just got a bit distracted there by realising just how wonky my framing of this video is. I'm really sorry, guys. I look like I'm sitting on a hill or something, but we're in too deep to turn back now. Pachinko is a family saga of Koreans who live in Japan, and it starts from the Japanese occupation of Korea right through the 20th century and probably a bit beyond that as well. And this book really got me thinking. I have been making an effort to diversify my reading in the last few years, particularly reading, own voices and books set in different countries. And I think the more diverse my reading gets, the more I realise how ignorant I still am. There's so much more about the world that I want to understand, and reading is really helping me, but I don't think that I could ever do enough reading to feel like I knew about all the different walks of life that people live. And I realised as I was reading this that I knew pretty much nothing about how Korea came to be divided, and this book taught me so much more than history at school ever did, but I know there's still so much more that I need to learn. But this book really does do a deep dive into how it was to be a Korean living in occupied Korea, how it was to be a Korean living as an immigrant in Japan. But this book isn't dry, and probably mainly because history is the context, not the focus. The family is the focus. Initially, probably a criticism I'd make of the book is that I didn't really get to know any of the individual characters particularly well. The time scale is so vast in this book that no one character really gets the chance to steal the limelight. But once I'd finished it, I kind of put that criticism to the side, because this isn't a book about any one individual. It's about the struggles of a family. It's about the struggles of living in that time period. And because there's no drill down into any one character, sometimes it can feel a bit callous, and particularly when a character dies, it's kind of like, and then he died, and then moves on to something else, which initially I found quite jarring. But then I came to appreciate that, a person is so much more than their death. They are their life, and it's the life that this book looks at and their impact on the other members of the family. And that's the same sort of cold, methodical way a family tree operates as well. And so reading this book is more like flipping through a photograph album than it is as a focus on any one person. But I really, really loved it. The writing is incredible and the book just works so well. It's definitely one worth picking up. The next topic is productivity, which, see my answer for cleaning. I anticipated that I would be so much more productive in lockdown than I have been, and actually I've probably been the least productive ever. The only thing I manage to achieve every week is one of these videos, and I wouldn't say that I am a high achiever or a perfectionist or anything, but I do always feel this constant pressure to be achieving something. I guess this is also why I don't tend to read a book in a day unless I have the excuse of a readathon, because to me, if I've spent the whole day, binging Netflix or reading a book, there's this nagging guilt that I have wasted the day in some way, that I haven't been as productive as I should have, and that is a pressure that I felt the whole way through lockdown. I've been having mental health difficulties anyway, and it's hard for me to unravel it, to find out whether lockdown has caused the mental health issues or whether the mental health issues are making me feel more guilty about how I've used my time in lockdown. It's a bit of a jumble in there. But the question for this topic is a book that you learned from or that had an impact on you. Now, I think I take something away from most books that I read. Like I said, I love learning about other countries and cultures and religions and people from all sorts of books, fiction, non-fiction, memoirs. So I like to choose books that are going to maybe contribute something to my understanding of the world around me. But I think the book that really helped form me, or at least ignite the feminist side of me, was The Vagina Monologues by Ensler. I read this when I was about maybe 21, 22, and it really opened the doors in my mind to consider myself as a woman. And what I mean by that is like what it means to be a woman. This book started me really getting in touch with how I felt in the world around me, how choices and decisions in my life have been shaped by certain things, particularly my relationships with men, my sense of self-worth, and even just knowing like how my body operated. I'm not saying all of that came from this particular book, but this was definitely the spark to the powder keg. And I definitely do identify myself as a feminist. I'm very passionate about equality. This book is a collection of lots of different things. There are essays and thoughts, personal experience. I think there might even be a poem in here. And it is quite focused on sexuality, but it really brings in a lot of the experience of being a woman. It triggered the V-Day movement, which is a grassroots campaign against violence towards women, and in many ways it put into words some of the things that I was thinking and feeling but didn't really feel I could own. So yeah, this is definitely a book that has shaped who I am as a person. The next topic is FaceTime, which is quite nice seeing as I've just got off a coffee chat with my girls, which is something I really haven't been doing enough of during lockdown. I am quite guilty, particularly when I get low, of isolating myself from people, and really it doesn't help me. As soon as I am with the people that I love, the whole world seems that bit brighter and I feel that bit more able to cope with things. So today's really lifted me, but for me I find it quite difficult sometimes to make that first step and reach out. But yeah, I really had a good time this morning, and I've got another wee catch up planned with another one of my friends tomorrow, so I'm much looking forward to that. The prompt for this subject is a book you were gifted. So I've gone with a book my brother gave me years and years ago, which I absolutely loved, and it's called Brixton Beach by Roma Tern, I think is how you pronounce her surname. So this kicks off during the 7/11 bombings in London, but it also spans kind of 30 years in the past to a Sri Lankan island in the time of the civil war there. Alice is a young girl who then has to go and live in London as an immigrant with her mother after some devastating things happen, and it looks at her experiences there. She gets married, not particularly happily. She has a son. And then it comes right up to those bombings and how it is for her to live in a society which is increasingly fearful of terrorism and suspicious of others. This book, and particularly the part set in Sri Lanka, really touched me. Sri Lanka sounds beautiful. I would love to visit there one day. It was a long time ago that I read this book. The details are a bit fuzzy, but it was definitely a really great read, really interesting. I knew nothing about Sri Lanka before I read it, and I think it maybe came out at the same time, like roughly the same time as Brick Lane by Monica Ali, and I don't know if it necessarily got the attention it deserved because they were dealing with quite similar topics, and Brick Lane obviously was a huge success, but this is definitely an incredible book. The next topic is self-care, and the prompt for this is something you've done recently to look after yourself. So this is a bit beyond the books, I suppose. For me, self-care, like reading is part of that. It's my time where I don't have responsibilities. It's time to do something I enjoy, and I kind of find reading, I've tried meditation and I can see its value, but I find it quite hard to spare the time for it and a little bit hard to close off my mind. But for me, reading is almost like a meditation. I don't tend to think of anything beyond the book as I'm reading, and even in the roughest days, curling up with a book at the end of it really does help me to feel that little bit better. But beyond books, I'm not great at the self-care that's kind of thrown about a lot. You know, baths and colouring in, that sort of thing. And as someone who has decades worth of mental health issues under her belt, I don't know if these kind of popular self-care approaches, I think they're probably helpful if you're feeling a bit down in the dumps or a bit stressed and overwhelmed, but they don't really get to the core of deep-rooted mental health issues. I think for me, rather than self-care, self-compassion is a bit more important. And one of the things that I really beat myself up about is my weight and my relationship with food. At the start of this year, I rejoined Weight Watchers and I'd lost about 10 pounds before lockdown hit. And I was feeling quite positive. I know that I am incredibly overweight. I'm in the obese category. I know the risk that's putting on my health. But more than that, I know that it makes me feel bad about myself. It makes me lack in confidence. And in a previous life, I lost nearly 7 stone. I kept it off for quite a long period of time, and I know how much better about myself I felt when I was not just, you know, slim and able to wear the clothes that I wanted. I no longer felt, you know, separate from other people because of my weight, but because, you know, I felt fitter, I felt healthier. And for me, that's really the thing that I need back in my life. I want to feel, you know, like as if I can deal with the kids without losing any shred of energy I had, you know, to do physical things without feeling really like it's taking a toll on me. I want that back so much. And also, you know, I do want to wear nicer clothes. I do want to feel attractive. And those are things that at the moment I don't have either. And Weight Watchers have really tried to support members during lockdown. There are virtual meetings and things, but I don't know, I found it far too easy just to go back and hide in the food again, and the weight crept on, and I just kind of had a bit of a freak out. And I'd seen Noom advertise for a good few years now, and I just decided sometimes to help me kickstart my weight loss again, I need to try new things. So I've been doing Noom for a couple of weeks now. It's been really helpful. I've lost about 6 pounds and I'm feeling a bit more hopeful about the big weight loss journey that I have ahead of me. It's based more on psychology, and I'm finding that quite helpful. I like using the app, ticking off all the tasks for the day. So I think at least until everything's back to normal and I can go back to a Weight Watchers meeting, I think I'll stick with Noom for now. I know weight loss is a contentious issue. We should all love our bodies at any size, or, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And people see dieting as punishment, and I guess part of me does also feel that way. But I have to be honest and see that, you know, with my binge eating and things, that is the real punishment. The weight gain, that is the real punishment. I need to make steps to make myself healthier. I'm not getting any younger. So for me, I think this focus on trying to be healthier and tackle some of my food demons, that is self-care. And the final topic is a bonus. So the prompt is a book coming out soon. So this will be my first chance to really rave about a book that I read this week called Scabby Queen by Kirsten Innes. So you may have heard me mention this before. I started it during the 24-hour readathon, but then it just kind of sat while I was trying to get through some other books, and I picked it up again last week, and I absolutely loved this. So this is about Cleo Campbell, who as a young woman was a one-hit wonder with a kind of political anti-poll tax song. She was the new beautiful pop star, but then her career kind of never went anywhere after that. It looks at her upbringing as the daughter of separated parents who are very different. Her mother brings her up in a town on the west coast of Scotland that is really struggling through miners' strikes and all the kind of difficulties that came with Thatcherite Britain. Her father is a bit of a flaky, idealistic folk singer. So Cleo, after she turns 50, dies by suicide in the home of one of her friends, and the story is told through the memories of people who knew her, whether they loved her, whether they hated her. And so at first I found it quite confusing because there's a lot of names, there's a lot of different time periods all meshed together, but as I kind of figured that out and the story came together, I thought it was exceptional. Cleo is not a likeable character, she's not particularly warm, but as you look at her past and other things she's been through, you kind of understand her motivations and her drive. And there, underneath the story of Cleo herself, there is another story of a group of squatters in London who she befriends and kind of steers particularly the women of that group later in life to take on a court case against a police officer, and that brings a lot of things out for one member of that group in particular. So as this story kind of charts the 50 years that Cleo was alive, it covers a lot of pop culture, political culture. So, you know, there's different bands mentioned. We've got the anti-Iraq war protest, we've got Brexit, we've got Scottish independence. It's all in there, and I really liked that grounding in the reality of this fictional pop star's story. And overall, I thought this book was excellent. I thought the cast of characters are really interesting, the writing's really good. This book comes out, I think, in July, and it really deserves to get some attention. So there we go, a wee fun tag with me sitting on my weird hill with a storm raging outside. Probably not the best video that I've ever done, but I enjoyed it and I hope you did too. If you want to join me for more bookish chat, I put a video up every Saturday and I would love to have you in my gang, so please subscribe. And if you've got any thoughts on any of the books I've mentioned, any of the topics that this tag covers, how are you coping in this current climate? What did you have for lunch? I don't know, just leave me a comment, I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, bye!